Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. So, feedback is important. Can't stress that enough. Here are the ways to reach out to me. Email, Substack, X, and of course, fill up those comments in YouTube. So this episode is centering around Halloween, specifically about the movie film score for Halloween. And of course, I'm going to give my thoughts and give my perspective about the aspects of how, well, from my point of view, how I think. And then, of course, other critics and other people have stated this about, this isn't nothing new, but it's just my nuanced take, my other take about this. As far as the aspects of, does it actually enhance the experience of the film with the horror aspect of the film? Does that help to that experience? All right, so here we go. Let's get into all of this. All right, so my point of view, my perspective about the aspects of whether it be thrillers, but more along the lines of, comedy, romance, but more along the lines of getting back to horror. So I think that sound absolutely is the complement and the supplement for the scene in the film for horror. So what I'm saying by this is, for instance, when we go into Halloween, for instance, sorry about that with that call. All right, and don't that annoy you? It's definitely annoying me with the spam calls there. But anyhow, so let's getting back to horror with Halloween. When Myers is going and wreaking havoc, and and the heroine and Jamie Lee Curtis, it's slipping my mind about her name in the movie. But anyway, when she's walking through the house and she thinks that she's safe, and then he's leering in the back, and then that quick kick, or the do, that draws you into the visceral feeling that you would feel, and I think it calls to action that you would feel if you were in a situation like that. And it pumps that adrenaline to where you pay attention to the scene even more so. So, case in point, if you wipe it away and it's not there anymore, it doesn't have the same impact as if it would when you hear these sounds. And so this goes along the line of comedy shows, specifically scripted sitcoms. So, needless to say, for instance, this is another element to this. So shows like, which is, it was pretty decent when it originally started in its first seasons, and then it just went first to second, third seasons, I would say, and it just went downhill. So the Big Bang Theory and versus shows that didn't have a soundtrack or a laugh track. If you strip away, when you get into the latter parts of the series, if you strip away the soundtrack, it really reveals the circumstance that this show is not all that funny. Or, That's one of those things that people already noticed that from the get-go, but it's also another thing, or they just pushing it out there if somebody's listening or looking kind of mentality. Let's keep going with it. Versus shows that don't have a laugh track that are, comedy. Particularly what's coming into mind for me is Malcolm in the Middle. And, there's other shows that didn't have laugh tracks. But particularly with Malcolm in the Middle, when, that was more of a focusing on family. And then, with that aspect of making fun and making also commentary about, the day-to-day aspects of a family's life. Now, it's quite interesting that there's no laugh track there, so it calls you to action to see throughout the season, to get people's interest to see if it's actually funny and improve the point that it is funny. Because, again, it's one of those, I think, from my point of view, and of course other people have this point of view. So, I'm emphasizing on the writers versus the actors. And so when those all merge together, and then it's sometimes when, the writers, this has been in press and, actors have said this and other things. Those really good actors that know how to improvise. And then when a script is supposed to be presented a certain way, and the actor doesn't think, well, they either hold back, or they interpret this line their different way, and they deliver it, and it works. And then also, case in point, with SNL show, like the SNL when it was good in its heyday, and I appreciate, and they're still going, and I would recommend that to listen to their podcast, Fly on the Wall, with Dana Carvey and David David Spade. Those, legends of comedy. And then along the lines with Rest His Soul with Chris Farley, and then Adam Sandler, those guys. And then back with Rest His Soul too, with Phil Hartman, those guys too, and then Billy Crystal, guys like that. And, and then going all the way back when it started with, with his issues with Chevy Chase, give credit where it's due, he's funny. And then Bill Murray and Gilda Radner and Garrett Morris and Jane, oh man, I don't know her. She's really funny too. She was in, she just kept delivering even past SNL, in the Third Rock from the Sun, her, Jane Curtis, there we go. All those guys, and then of course Dan Aykroyd, funny guy, funny, heavy hitters. So they didn't have laugh tracks on SNL. And then when it was at its heyday, it was really good as far as how they delivered everything. And then all these comedians, actors, they had their, some of them from school of improv and everything else. The way they delivered it mattered, and then draw the attention. And so, it's unfortunate the way, when the 2000s hit, there were still some funny people. Amy Poehler's really funny and everything, and it's unfortunate the way Will Ferrell is today, but he was funny when he was. But Chris Kattan was so funny, and then people like that, and then it just washed away. It's not what it used to be. So running into horror, again, when you miss the mark as far as hiding or taking away, and how you write the script and how you use sound to emphasize the scene, it really, it reveals how everything is perceived, better or for worse. And that's something to take into the aspects of the film score for Halloween. All right, so let's get into all of this. Okay, so of course this will be provided, the source will be provided for you in this episode. So I'm reading from Take Note, and this was by Michelle Darling, and it's entitled Halloween Theme, What Makes the Music So Scary. It goes like this. It says the music from the 1978 film Halloween, of course, was revolutionary, not just because director John Carpenter also composed the score, but because Carpenter's adventurous use of early synth pads and stabs, which helped him create one of the most powerful and creepiest soundtracks of all time. And so, you see, that insight it helps amplify the dynamic between how he understood Minty, Comic Minty, he's a YouTuber. He said it best. I would encourage y'all if you don't know, but I'm sure you do because it's well known. Minty Comics. He goes and talks about John Carpenter, and then he was talking about The Thing, and then he was emphasizing how with John Carpenter, he was a music person, and along the lines of the same thing that I'm addressing, that he understood the impact of music and what that can do for film. And so, needless to say, all the little details that he put into the unfolding of this, the score and the sounds of the film set a different precedent than other films, I would say. So they have their own realms as far as one of those things that tied into these categories where, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was one of those you deem around the realms of gore and avant-garde gore, things of that nature. And then the whole aspect of that being based off of true events, but it really isn't. It's one of those things too. And then you get, films like Night of the Living Dead. You get films like going on along the lines in the 80s of films like the Friday the 13th song, franchise with that, and all of that. But this Halloween film, it really gave a nuance to getting back to the basics of the imaginative aspects of storytelling. And so, understanding how impactful that can be when you focus in on the minor details of the simplest goals of presenting the story tells a lot about everything. And so I'm going to go into the aspect of how it was on a shoestring budget when you think about the whole dynamic of everything. That proves the other point of how when you have the direct vision of what you want to convey in your story, it doesn't matter how much money you have in your budget. And so maybe that's one of those things that out of bless comes more creativity, more necessity to make it even better. And so here we go. Let's go into more details. So the late 1970s were a pivotal time for electronic music and the soundtrack format. And music like this was previously the domain of science fiction. But Carpenter discovered that the new electronic sounds lent themselves well to the horror genre. Halloween was on a low-budget film, which cost around $300,000. There weren't enough funds to pay a film composer, let alone an orchestra. Carpenter had studied music as a kid and played in bands. He then booked a studio in LA and connected with Dan Wyman, and eventually engineer Alan Howarth to help him realize the soundtrack with synthesizers. The challenge was that they had to record the music without synchronizing it to pictures, since the technology had not been invented yet. They played and recorded the music to a click and a stopwatch. They matched it up with the film later on the 35mm mag stock of the film studio. And that's quite remarkable how that feat of foresight and engineering to, have these ideas that doesn't really mesh with the technology that is given to you, but you find the unity in the adversity of that, and that's how this film was made. And then you're going to also go along the lines with Sam Raimi, with Evil Dead, with how, them with being on a shoestring budget and then working with the technology at the time to tell the story that they did. So the script for Halloween was written in approximately 10 days by Deborah Hill in itself. So, says Carpenter has said that his biggest influencers, as far as composers, are recognized as one to name Morricone and Bernie Herrmann, the latter of whom is best known for his score for Psycho, which is the film that inspired Halloween. He says the rhythm of Halloween's main title theme was inspired by an exercise his father taught him on the bongos in 1961, the beating of 5/4 time. And so going along the lines of Psycho, yes, Alfred Hitchcock, he was a masterful storyteller in the fact of merging thriller and suspense with mystery and intrigue. And so a movie like Psycho, there has been a lot of analysis about it. And so going on the lines of that, actors have talked about it and all of this, and saying that when they seen for the first time experiencing a movie like Psycho was pivotal for them, to where with his problems, I'm gonna case in point going back to the person I'm speaking of with his issues, the actor from All in the Family, the son-in-law. And then when he went on to be a great director. But anyhow, with his issues with the political, going into the universe about rebel cry with all this stuff going against, going on the bandwagon, not going against, going on the bandwagon of the liberal battle, not even liberal, that leftists, and that's another thing where it's sad that leftists has tied themselves to liberal ideologies when those are two separate things. But this leftist idea of how the world should work. So anyway, he recounted for his first time of seeing Psycho, and he was talking about how bringing everything down from the details of how everything was shot and how it emphasized the psychological awareness of that there's something that of course I'm paraphrasing, I'm paraphrasing that something's not quite right. And so, yeah, when I saw Psycho, and then, initially seeing it as late teens, and seeing it, because I saw, in and out things like, growing up with my mom, she still likes Alfred Hitchcock, so does my husband. And so seeing the Alfred Hitchcock hours and then, watching the series. And then I saw The Birds a little bit when I was a kid, but not really paying that much attention to it. And so going back to Psycho, even I paid attention to even the minor detail of cutting to the shot of the actress being in the shower, and of course Jamie Lee's mother, and the wife of Tony Curtis, Janet Leigh, I believe her name. So, and then cutting to, you see the silhouette of the ominous figure, then cutting to the knife, then cutting to the horror and the sound, then cutting to first showing the drain, and then showing the pool of blood running down the drain, and then circling back to her eye, and how that artfully tells so much about the setup and the plot of the story without saying anything. And so this goes again to the aspect of John Carpenter's Halloween, how the score in this movie set so much of an impact of how other, following the path of horror, of understanding the influence of sound and the fear within the sound, and how that drives home the emphasis of this ominous, distortion of a horror film, of how that can call to action again that visceral feeling of being in a panicked state, from my point of view. All right, so there's a point in making a movie when you experience the final result. He writes on site. For me, it's always when I see the interlock screening of the picture with the music. All of a sudden, a new voice is added to the raw, naked effects or music footage. The movie takes on its final style, and is on that the emotional total should be judged. And so I think this is a person that's saying that, quoted, but I really think that this is Carpenter's quotation. So, and this is from, let me go back. So, Berkeley Online, and I believe that's Berkeley School of Music. So it breaks everything down from the musical notes and tones of this score. So it says the main theme of the film is actually very simple yet incredibly memorable. This could be because its haunting dissonance and its relentless drive. One of the techniques Carpenter uses to make people feel unsteady is the irregular time signature. So as he mentioned, the piece is in 5/4. The how it's synced is like this. So It's created with accents in groups of 3, 3, 3, and 2, and 2. The initial pace in the groups of 3 is set, but then it is suddenly changed to groups of 2, making it feel as if it's pushing us forward and creating an unsteadiness. So a piano plays the 10th note melody in 8 notes. So C sharp to F sharp in a tritone. It repeats 3 times, and then the C sharp raises a minor to second. And I think that, going into these details, heightens the aspects of how masterful it is in the composing this this score, and so you get the insight about that. It's good to know. So it says A minor in second to D and returns to F. They have sharp and creating a minor in sixth. So the entire melody descends to have step to C to F and creating a feeling of falling and leaving what was the original key. So the chosen intervals are trinotes in minor sixth that then descends to a minor. The second all created dissonance and tension just by the inherent nature of the intervals. Whole notes playing every 10 notes, and low brass and layered electronic strings play the tonic to give us an independent doom and a slight feeling of grounding. So tucked underneath the melody is a steady pulsing electronic rhythm. It's a percussive sound, almost sounding like a foot stepping, keeping time played in an unrelented 16th notes. So all of these parts together create a suspenseful and dissonant theme that is incredibly unsettling. And so the theme occurs as soon as a car approaches and it drives by, and as the girls drive by. So Jamie Lee Curtis' character, Laurie, notices the car. Her friend then thinks it's a mutual acquaintance, but it's really Mike Myers. So Laurie heads towards and watches the car pass slowly. The pulse of the music matches the speed of his drive-by. As soon as Michael stops the car, once the girls yell at him, the music surges in volume, and then it slowly fades out, and his car finally passes. So the simplicity of this theme is highly effective, with the steady pulse of the 5/4 time and the recognizable melody. The tick-tock clock-like nature of the electronic percussive sound and relentless 16th notes suggest Michael's unrelenting drive to kill. It truly is what makes the scene very frightening. There's no gore here, but we know the threat is real. And it is the music that is continuous, steady, and unresolving. And it goes on to say that, I think that this person wrote this very well. We sit in anticipation, and we know this threat will continue. And so I'm going to end on, it says, in short of technique and courage to keep the score simple, that makes Carpenter such a master of horror music. So notice all that many of the score sounds in Halloween came from synthesizers, but were emulating traditional instruments such as piano sounds, harpsichords, sounds, strings, brass, and bass. Going along the line of the percussion feel of everything. And so those of you, so I have some musical, background, nothing professional. And I wish, I pushed more in my youth. In the 6th grade, I was in the band and I played drums and everything. And then, pushing it more, throughout my teen years, but I digress with that. But I believe that when I'm going back, my point of saying that is I believe it's C sharp with but I don't think it's flat, but I think it's C sharp with what I'm reading. But those are who are in the know about musical reading. You feel free to read the source that I have provided, and correct me, give me insight about that. Be greatly appreciated. So this reaches the end of the Harvard Light. And of course, our feedback is really important, and I would like to know, it's very fascinating to me and interesting to me. I'd like to also continue this conversation, know what you all think about the aspect of music and horror. Does that help to add to the emphasis of the scenes, or what do you all think about that? So feel free to reach out to me either through email, Substack, X, and of course fill up those comments in YouTube. It'd be greatly appreciated. All right, so this reaches the end of the Harvard Light. Tune in, turn up, and absolutely take care. Bye-bye now.